Hey everyone, how's it going? Welcome back to this week's watchlist video brought to you by DeepView and the Trade Lab. As always, we're going to run through my Trade Lab focus list going into next week. And we've got a bunch of chart requests from Tesla to Palantir to LEU, CIFR, IREN, CRDO. There's a lot of names to cover today. So as we go through it, let me know your thoughts down below if any of these stand out to you. And let me know maybe 3 names that you guys are watching very closely into next week. And just to set the stage, let's take a look quickly at the QQQ. Obviously, we've rallied strongly off these lows, but now we're heading into this unfilled gap territory. So I'd actually love to see the index basically consolidate here, build out a new range above the moving averages. But that doesn't mean that individual stocks can't perform really well. So we'll see what basically next week brings us. But this is the overall context. We're above the moving averages. We're in a developing uptrend. And now it's up to individual stocks to go ahead and perform. Okay, so let's go ahead and dive right in and start with this first section, which is kind of my larger watch list for the Trade Lab. And I'll talk about kind of my, top focus names as well, of which there's only about 1 to 4 of them. As I mentioned, this is brought to you by DeepView. This is my daily platform for screening, charting, analyzing companies. And we just launched the AI side panel, and you can also launch this in the dashboard module as its own standalone app. And basically this allows you to dive deeper into companies, research them. For instance, I just asked here, is DY related to the AI theme? What are similar stocks? And it dives into how DICOM is related to building those AI data centers. And it also walks through a bunch of similar stocks. For instance, GLW here, which basically you can click any of these names mentioned, bring up their charts quickly. So it makes it really fast and easy to go ahead and research companies. So if you are interested in DeepView, I recommend checking it out. You can click the link down below in the description or go to deepview.com. Okay, let's dive into DY. This is a recent gapper. I covered it back in this area, watching for push higher and U-turn, which it already did, but now it's setting up another spot, pulling back into the 10 EMA, tightening up here the last few days. So basically I'm watching for a range breakout to the upside. And for all of these, my stop would basically be at the low of the day or the low of the previous day as it pushes through this range breakout. And for any of these ranges, if we break below this range, that setup is basically void, and I'd be looking to other opportunities or just taking a step back and reassessing. And this one as well, if it breaks below the 10 EMA, likely it's going to need a longer term consolidation period. But as I mentioned, watching for a range breakout to the upside through these highs. And I really like this tight inside day to end the week on Friday, right above the 10 EMA here. I love tight ranges that form above the 10 EMA or the 21 EMA, especially back within a base. So that is DY. Moving on, we've got FSLR. This is a solar leader, another theme linked to AI, and basically watching for a range breakout to the upside, pushing off that 21 EMA and pushing towards the high of the space. This is basically looking for an early entry at the right-hand side where you can manage risk a lot tighter as it pushes through these levels here. We did have a fade on Friday, but it's still back in that range breakout. And often that actually leads to better opportunities because a lot of people maybe tried it here, got stopped out, got disappointed, and then it goes without you the next week or the next day. So definitely a name to have on your radar, watching for a range breakout to the upside, re-breaking through this level right here. And let me go ahead and bring back the data panel. You can switch back and forth between the AI data, AI terminal assistant here and the data panel here very easily to review data points. And then if you want to ask a question, for instance, how is FSLR related to AI? You can go ahead and ask it very quickly here. Okay, moving on, we've got TARS, again, watching for a strong theme. And basically, here's the answer here. It's related to AI through its role in powering AI driven. So you can always dive deeper into a story here. That's why I love the AI assistant. But let's bring back the data panel here. So first things first, TARS, biotech, pharma, healthcare, that theme has been very strong. And there's a name that's set up quite a few times. I featured it back in here. A nice push so far from this level, and now setting back up with a range above the 10 EMA. So basically watching for a range breakout to the upside. At this point, it's more of a swing trade type entry than more one that you would start a whole new position trade. But TARS, watching for a range breakout to the upside and push off that 10 EMA. ZYME, same kind of overall theme, biotech, recent gapper, strong trend, and now setting up a nice range here, watching for a break higher on a pickup in volume. TXG, a little bit more of a boom and bust type name, but it's pulled back now and setting up. You got an upside reversal, then an inside day, and basically watching for a short-term change in momentum, break through those highs and pushing higher and U-turning again, and hopefully getting another move like this. This again is more of a fast mover swing trade type of opportunity. And, this is one that can really go when it does trend. So definitely want to keep an eye on TXG in the life sciences, bio, pharma type theme. That's been very strong. And just overall taking a step back, AI theme is strong, semiconductors, biotech, retail has been strong with AEO, a few other names in that area. Miners have been strong as well. We'll show Ego in just a second. And also crypto miners with HUT here is also a name to keep an eye on. But, AI theme, energy for AI, that's kind of my focus personally as a trader currently. FLS related to data center fabrication, basically watching for a breakout from this consolidation. I wouldn't mind one last pullback to the 10 EMA. We've got a little bit of wedging action here on the right-hand side. So I'd love to see an upside reversal, undercurrent rally of that 10 EMA and then a breakout. And then you could act on it both on a pullback to the 10 EMA that bounces or on a breakout through this level. And ideally just a strong trend. Again, this is related to, I believe, cooling of both, energy, nuclear energy, as well as data centers here. Very strong bar here on earnings and very strong surprise here on this bar right here, leading to this powerful move and starting a strong trend. This is coming from a nice big base, but this is a smaller cap name and, not quite, a liquid leader like an NVIDIA or Tesla. MDB, really nice action, recent gapper, actionable here on Friday as it reclaimed that HVC, but watching for fall through this high and the start of a trend from this gap area. AMTM, a recent gapper, now setting up a tight range here, upside reversal here on Friday, so watching for fall through to the upside and a U-turn and start of a trend above that 10 EMA. Ego, a lot of miners, and this is precious metal. This is in the gold theme. Look similar to this. They had downside reversals on Friday, but they're basically forming a downside reversal back into the range where they're setting up. Some of their ranges are lower in the base, some are a little bit higher, but basically all of them have the same look because they're very, very related. So basically watching for a re-breakout through this level and continuation of this trend. It seems kind of like the gold, silver, miner trend is kind of out of the mainstream now, and that's when they can start their moves. And then once everybody starts talking about them again, that'll be when they top again and form a longer term base. WGS, healthcare equipment theme, watching for a flag breakout, push off that 10 EMA, again entering intraday as it breaks through that level and pushes higher, stop at the low of the day. Or a tight and logical stop would be, at this higher low if we do push higher from this level, as well as the 10 EMA. All of those would be tight and logical basically spots to place your stop loss. CLS, watching for basically a move from this consolidation. And I love this tight day. This is what I call a setup day. Very tight action from open to close, as well as look at from the high and low here. This is the type of bar that often leads to big expansion the next day, especially if you're within a tight consolidation. This one is a little bit different because we've already had, a push off this higher low, and now we're forming a tight day. So we're kind of looking for reconfirmation through this longer term level. But I love seeing these type bars in particular when we're already within a tight range, something like this, and then there's a tight bar that often leads to really nice expansion. For instance, if we take a look at Google, and I'll just do GGLL, basically the leverage ETF. If we take a look at this base, push higher, and then right as we're setting up by the pivot, look at this bar. This is the type of bar I'm looking for. And I featured this in the Trade Lab right on this day. And from this type of bar, we get expansion and the start of a trend because this type bar is happening near a larger level. That's what we're looking for. And, on the right side of a larger pattern, big moves come from big patterns. And then we can use smaller patterns to basically allow us to manage risk that much better and kind of catch early expansion and get a good cost, manage risk tightly versus this low of the day or this low of the day here and catch a move like this, which went from high 60s to now already, over 100. So again, just the tight setup type day, definitely a concept that you want to internalize and go back and study. And you'll be amazed studying bases how many big moves have something like this right before they really get going. Okay. Sorry for that aside, but let's get going. TVTX, biotech, forming a range here in this consolidation. This is a longer term trender, acting well and basically watching for a swing trade breaking through these highs, managing risk at lows. Again, if we violate these lows, the setup is void and you're either not in it because it never broke out, or you're out with a small loss. Moving on to HUT, a lot of the crypto miner theme looks similar to this, basically setting up the right-hand side of a base. You have a higher low forming here, tight day here, tight inside day, not as tight as the previous setup day we talked about, but kind of a variation on that same concept. Tight inside day right near this level. So watching for push through here and a break above that 21 EMA as well. I love maybe one more day, maybe an upside reversal that closes strong and then a breakout, because we do have a little bit of a push higher here, and a little bit more of a pause would make this setup even better. That would, improve the quality of the setup and likely improve the explosiveness as it breaks through that level. But that is HUT. LMND, one that's pushed strongly. So again, I'd love to see a setup day form right here, or an upside reversal off that 10 EMA, undercutting and reclaiming that level, but basically watching for a breakout through the HVC and a push from this consolidation, which is kind of a base on base. And we've got this gapper. I love seeing recent gaps, and I love kind of focusing on those. And then often there's great setups that happen thereafter, either in the first few days after the gap or after a base that forms after a gap, just like this. But gaps equal power. They're the street getting caught off guard and likely the beginning of a strong trend. And if you go back and study many model book moves, a lot of them start or, have many earnings gaps within them. CVNA, this one gapped up on its inclusion to S&P 500. If we go over to an intraday chart, it's up at 439 right now. It's basically watching for a gap and go move, or an entry opportunity in the days after that gap as well. You can see it's up about 10% after hours, and big volume coming in as well. And going back to CVNA, if we go down here, you can see days to cover is close to 4. So there's a lot of short interest here with this name. 8% of the float is currently short. So that's why we're looking for a gap and go move, because you've got all those names short that have to cover with that gap up into new highs. NVIDIA watching for a pop through that 21 EMA, as well as these highs here, and move up the right-hand side of the base. This is one of my focuses for next week. Obviously part of the semi-AI theme. It's been lagging a little bit recently, but can easily, make a strong move here into the end of the year. INTC, same type of theme. Could use a little bit more development of the short-term range above the 10 EMA, but I like how we had a negative close here, and then immediately we gapped up and held. So watching for a push back through this pivot, and ideally gets maybe an upside reversal, a few more days below that level to really set up basically a handle within this cup, and then watching for a breakout push higher from that level. AMD, another one of my focuses early next week, basically watching for a range breakout through these highs, or a pop above the 21 EMA. You can see it was rejected twice here and here. But again, that just kind of gets people's eyes off it. They start hitting the stock, and that's when it's going to work. So basically watching for a pop higher through that 21 EMA and at the start of a move up the right-hand side of the base. And this is very tight. This range is only about 5% from high to low. So from tight ranges comes expansion, and that's what we want to capitalize on as traders. And if we break below these lows, likely this base needs more time. Likely we retest these lows and maybe have kind of a double bottom form, over the course of the next few weeks, and just a longer base is needed at that point. But we'll see if this works or not, and what happens with this name. BE, nice entry opportunity here. I did a whole write-up for TradeLab members about this day here, but now setting up below this level. Ideally, we get a few more days of consolidation against that 21 EMA, compressing again, and then from that compression comes expansion, and a push through that level would be ideal up the right-hand side of the space. But this is a longer-term leader, and another one that had the start of this from an earnings gap. If I go ahead and remove the drawings, you can see we had a nice catalyst gap. I believe it was a partnership announcement with Oracle here, and that led to this very strong move. And now it's setting up another base within that consolidation, really the first pullback to that 50 SMA area, and we'll see if it can push through this level and continue its move up towards these previous highs. All right, so that kind of wraps up the main larger watch list for TradeLab members and for what I'm focusing on. AMD, NVIDIA, Intel, probably my top focus going into next week, and as well as TXG for for a swing trade. So we got biotech, semis, that's kind of my focus early next week. FSLR as well, pretty high up on there. But again, let me know of these setups, which are kind of your favorite overall. Okay. So let's dive in now to a few chart requests here. Tesla for me, the last opportunity, and I focused on this here, was this range breakout through the 21 EMA and these highs right here. Now we're a little bit in no man's land. We need likely one more contraction, one more pullback handle to form before we test these highs, or just simply, you know, there's no real great reward to risk entering in here where we could easily get a pullback and stop you out. So for me, for another entry, we need to contract a little bit more, and that would set up a great setup here. Everybody will be watching this one, looking for a push through these highs if we do get a nice handle at this point. But this is the last great entry here against the 21 EMA would have been a good spot. And then here on a positive expectation breaker, as well as we failed to roll over and break down, gap up, strong action, push higher, and then also here popping through the 21 EMA. But right now, again, we're just kind of in the middle of nowhere, and we don't want to enter at the middle of nowhere because one, there's no momentum. It's already kind of used it up. And two, there's no tight and logical risk entry. You know, the 10 EMA is all the way down here. There's no recent range. It's unlikely, you know, to really expand super strongly. Of course it can. But again, we're always looking for strong reward to risk trades, and there's not really one developing right now. But in a few days, that could all change. So keep an eye on Tesla. Definitely a liquid leader to stay focused on if you're not already, you know, in from, you know, an entry right here, here, or back in here. CRDO, recent gapper pulling back into this base. Definitely want to watch early next week for a bounce or an undercut and reclaim of the 10 EMA and reclaim of that level. And again, a semiconductor with super strong growth. Look at this down here. You know, very strong surprise as well. So this is definitely a name to keep an eye on early next week to see if we get a bounce and U-turn and continuation of this strong prior trend. Path, recent gapper. I need to see a little bit more days here, consolidation. You know, we've made a really strong move and we are kind of rallying off the base lows into these highs. So I love to see a pullback, tight area form here, and then a reconfirmation. For me, just needs a little bit more, you know, more time here, but we could absolutely continue trending, and definitely a name just overall to keep an eye on as it can trend really nicely in just a matter of days. GEV, last great entry was back in here. Again, now we're kind of in no man's land within the space, but I'd love to see it push higher and form another handle before looking to break out. And this looks kind of sloppy, but overall, this is still just about a 20% deep base. And this is a name that can really move when it gets going. So again, related to AI, energy, definitely a name to keep an eye on, GEV. Palantir, a lot of people kind of have their eyes off this one, but we just popped through the 50 SMA. We're above that 21 EMA. This would have been the last great entry here as it reclaimed that level. A nice outside day. Again, we're kind of in no man's land here. Base pivot is here. I'd love to see a handle form before we test this level. Fix, nice action, upside reversal, a little bit stretched in the very short term. Maybe we get a nice setup day, but overall I could watch for a nice consolidation breakout. And construction engineering is another theme that's been very, very strong. ASML, another semiconductor name. Nice base breakout, pulling back here. I'd love to see an undercut and reclaim of the 10 EMA or just continuation of the trend and U-turn higher. And I think if AMD and NVDA go, this likely continues trending, and it's actually leading those names at this point, you know, as well as Intel. Moving on, we've got Open. This is a fast mover. This can go 400% in 26 days. So not for the faint of heart, but basically watching for, you know, overall a breakout through this level. This is also a key level, but in the more short term, we've got an inside day, inside bar here. This would be a very short-term entry. And again, this is more for swing traders who know how to trade these aggressive type of stocks, but overall forming higher lows up the right-hand side of the base. And you'd want to see a reclaim in the 21 EMA and a push higher, and ideally in one bar, breaking through this level, this high, and this high all in one, and then setting up a handle before attempting through this level. LAC, this is in the metals and mining stock. Again, a very fast mover. Pulling back, this, you know, honestly, this is maybe too fast a mover for what I like to trade, but again, we've reclaimed that 21 EMA, forming a tight range right on top of it. So be watching for a range breakout to the upside. And this is one that can make you know, a nice move in a short amount of time. We do have unfilled gaps up in this area, so that would be where resistance is. But in the short term, we'd be watching for a break through this level and a push higher above that 50 SMA. GMAB, one that can really trend. You do have some gaps here that it's dealing with. That's why it's forming out this handle, but watching in the short term a break above this basically handle within this base. IBP also in the home builder construction theme, setting up nicely in this tight base, about 17% deep. And this is one that can make decent moves. So it's not too slow because it's a home builder. Setting up a nice handle, watching for a break higher through these highs, and basically a continuation of that longer term trend. And this is basically a longer term cup and handle as well. And you can see in the past, I love seeing this. This stock can make a decent move. 100% from a home builder, that's pretty darn good. And you could always kind of take a look at Nail, which is the 3X of the home builders. This kind of has a little bit of a similar look. You can see if it reclaims that 200-day moving average. But IBP in general looks a little bit better than this, but this gives you a little bit more juice for a swing trade opportunity. Moving on, we've got VIAV. Again, I love these tight areas down here, but at this point, you kind of miss the best entry. Let me actually go ahead and draw in the pivot here. This is, again, an example of a setup day. And after the setup day, we get expansion. Look how tight the open to close here is. And we do have kind of a failed, push higher here, but it failed back into the range that was forming. So that's the difference. And that's a name you still want to have on your radar, because sometimes, again, after these failed breakouts, the next day, that's when it goes, when everybody's eyes are off it because they got stopped out or it didn't work out and they had to, take it off into the close. And then the next day is when it actually pushes. So really nice move here on Friday. Could watch for follow through here, but really this was the good entry right here at this point. Another name that's been trending nicely, recent gapper, and then set up in a little bit of consolidation. And I love this upside reversal, tight day combo, and then push higher. You see this all the time in these fast moving names. STX, a little bit wide and loose here. We had a gap and go on Friday. It's knocking against, this overall pivot. So ideally it forms a range, contracts a little bit more, and then re-breaks out. That's what I would be personally looking for. CIFR, same kind of space as HUT, and set up really nicely. You have a longer term trend, basically forming a mini cup and handle inside day to end out last week. And you'd basically be watching for a breakthrough this range through that high and a push off, off the moving averages and up the right hand side of the base through this level. Moving on, we've got LEU, a little bit lower in the base. This is one I've traded really well, really nice action, but now is back forming a base. It's a little bit lower. You had a downside reversal. BE is kind of leading this space and acting better. Currently, you have, a gap down here. We're having a little bit of trouble with 21 EMA, but overall you'd be watching for a breakthrough this level on a pickup in volume. And if we do get a strong day early next week, that would kind of be a positive expectation breaker given the weak close here on this Friday. It didn't close right at lows, but did close, in the lower third and back below the 21 EMA, catching a lot of people off guard. And if we just gap and go, it might catch people by surprise. Moving on, we've got CoreWeave, another name that's been hit pretty hard, has been, in a downtrend, and now is trying to form out a bottoming range. We draw this across here. It's now making progress back above the 21 EMA. Tight day to end last week, and wouldn't be surprised to see fall through to the upside. But for me, there's no real tight and logical entry unless you're a very quick trader here. We've already had some expansion at the upside, and now you'd be waiting for kind of the next range to form. Really the best opportunities was on the oops reversal on this bar, or as it broke through these highs, or on this upside reversal here, or even, early in the morning on this day here as it broke through this prior day's high. Moving on, we've got IREN, another name forming kind of a bottoming range here, and we can go ahead and draw in that pivot. You've got this downside reversal bar, and then this high kind of lining up. That's why I'm drawing this line here. Tight inside day, so could be watching for expansion and basically push off these base lows and reclaim that 21 EMA. And I'm drawing these bottoming ranges here, but, even if CoreWeave works out, or if IREN pops through and pushes higher, there's going to be a great opportunity later, higher up within the base that might even give a better reward to risk entry. So you don't have to catch these names off the bottoming ranges. You can wait for them to prove themselves a little bit more, tighten up a little bit because it's very choppy within these bottoming ranges. There's a lot of false starts. So you can wait until they've set up, a pullback range into the 21 EMA. And often that gives you, a better opportunity even than catching it at lower prices. But, lower prices doesn't matter if you have to have a wider stop loss. So, it's all about reward to risk and risking as little as possible. So that is IREN. SEI acting really nicely, another energy name. right near the top of this base inside day. We've pushed very strongly straight off the bottom. So I'd love to see a handle here, or an upside reversal to shake out some weak holders, let those moving averages catch up. But this could 100%, break out early next week through this high, and really nice growth numbers here from SEI. RIGL, this is a biotech name. I've watched this a few times. We had a nice pullback to the base pivot last week, and now a bounce, and now it's just kind of resting on the 10 EMA. No real range here forming for my liking, but overall acting well and trending above the 21 EMA. This would have been the ideal entry, where we have a recent gap, pullback into this low, undercut of that level, and then in one day we take out these two highs. That would be the entry managing risk at the low of the day, which is also the 10 EMA, nice confluence there. And then we get expansion from that contraction area right there. Moving on, we've got Jazz, recent gapper, then pulling back, and draw in the HVC here. We broke below it, and now we're testing that level. This HVC, which is basically the closing price of the large gap up day, which is on huge volume. That is always a very significant level shortly after the gap. And I'd be watching for maybe one more tight day and then a pop through that level here with Jazz. And again, if we break below this low, the setup is void. OKLO, again, another name with a bottoming range here and starting to push higher. We have a nice move here on this day. And this downside reversal level is pretty key. That's kind of the next key level to break through. And we had a slight gap down on Friday, but a tight upside reversal off the 21 EMA. So again, it's starting to form out a bottoming process, but needs to prove itself a little bit more. And I have no problem letting it prove itself, forming a tight range a little bit higher within the base, instead of trying to catch the lowest price. Maybe this works, maybe this doesn't. But again, you might have a better, tighter entry later on as the base is a little bit more mature. This is a pretty significant pullback, about 60%. So there is some overhead that this is going to need to deal with, and that's going to cause some choppiness and some frustration as well. Moving on, we've got PL, which has a nice trend here, now forming a longer term basing pattern and a nice push up here. This looks very similar to OKLO as well, and it's running into this area here. So another spot where we'd expect maybe a range to form, some supply to come to market, and you'd be watching for that to build out and then pop higher through this level. That's what I would be looking for. Last but not least, we've got CRK, which is a very strong stock, oil and gas name. This is another theme that's been acting well, very strong here. But the last good opportunity was back in this area as, it reconfirmed higher on this day after a slight gap down, pushed through that high. And now we're just kind of trending, and we have a little bit of a downside reversal here. Maybe it's ready for a pullback, but there's not really a tight logical spot. There's no contraction that we can use to enter as swing traders or position traders to get that immediate cushion that gives us options. So that's why I'd be waiting for a little bit of a pullback up against that 10 EMA. Okay, so we went through a lot of names, about 40 of them. Hopefully it gives you some ideas going into next week. Again, let me know maybe your top 3 from either my list or the larger list, or if you've got other names that you're watching closely, let me know down below in the comment section. If you want my take on them, I'd be happy to do that as well. But overall, best of luck next week. Hopefully you guys have an amazing one. Again, the indexes are maybe a spot where we get a pause, but that doesn't mean individual names can't work really well, especially, biotechs, which are a little bit less correlated to the market than other themes. And personally, the semiconductors are kind of one of my focuses going into next week to see if NVIDIA and AMD can expand higher and drive that theme higher, as well as FSLR is pretty top. TXG among the biotechs is one I'm really focused on. This is great for swing trades when it works. BE already in, but we'll see if it can contract a little bit more and give an add-on spot here up the right-hand side of the space. So overall, those are my thoughts going into next week, my focus list as well. And again, let me know your thoughts down below on the market, on these key names, and best of luck next week. So thanks so much for tuning in. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. If you did, go ahead and leave a like down below, subscribe if you're new to the channel, and I'll see you guys in future videos. Take care. Bye.